Welcome to CraftQuest on Call. I'm Ryan Ireland, and I am here with my co-host Andrew Welch. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
What's going on, Ryan? How you doing?
Doing good. Just hanging out. I like your bright shirt. I don't think you've ever wore such bright colors on the live stream, so it kind of adds a different. Maybe you shave. You just look different today. Not sure what it is.
It's not very observant. I did shave.
You did
A
shave.
lot of the beard is gone.
That's
But
what it
can I
is.
tell you the story that I was going to tell you off air? I'll just tell it real quick, like while we're warming up.
I
Is
mean,
that
I
all
don't
right?
need to warm up, but if you need something to be on your game, go ahead. Go for it.
I need to warm up. I'm like an
Okay.
old car. You got to like let me idle for a little while before I can get going.
Do you have a
Right?
carburetor? Is
I do have a carburetor. So my kids go to middle school, and or one of them used to go to middle school, and I went in there one time to do a reading for him in front of the whole class, right?
mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly what spurred me to do it, but I decided to play a character when I went in there. So I put on like a cowboy hat, and I went in there, and the entire time I talked with a southern accent. I was like talking to everybody and how you doing out there, and I'm going to read this little story to you, right? And I read the entire story with his accent. And even, the librarian there was like, okay, see y'all later. I did the whole thing in that accent. And then I just forgot about it.
Right.
This is actually a character that I played before. It's like a long story. I did it on a poker TV show and, whatever. My character's name was Austin. Anyway, so I did this whole thing and I forgot about it. And then I went back into the school to read for my other kid, like a year or two later. And the same librarian was there. And she was like looking at me. And I was just like, why is this lady looking at me? Like, what's going on? I was just like talking to her normally and all that kind of stuff. And she came up to me after I did the reading. And she's just like, the last time you were here, you had a southern accent. What happened? I'm just like, I'm like, oh. I'm like, I forgot that I did that, but that totally sounds like something I would do. She's like, yeah, I really thought you were from the South. And then when you came in, I was confused. I didn't realize you're the same person. And, anyway.
I mean, you're
Whatever.
as like New York and Yankee as they come, right? Aren't you from the Northeast? Like growing up?
Yeah, I grew up in Connecticut, but, doesn't mean you can't talk with a little Southern accent, can't put on a little hat, and people might think that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about a 4.5 out of 10 on accent rating.
It fools the New Englanders, okay?
Well, I mean, not particularly hard. So,
Oh,
oh,
isn't that where you're from?
I
Okay.
grew up. I grew
There
up.
we go. Yeah, so you are not quite New England. You're more like armpit area. Yeah,
No, I'm not from Virginia. I grew up in New Jersey.
exactly.
I was gonna say Delaware, but I kind of like Delaware. It's
All right, I'm gonna pour myself a drink.
yeah, go for it. I'm gonna have some
I
water.
promise I will not do the whole CraftQuest stream in a
That-
southern accent. I promise I won't do it.
That would be good. All right, so we have some questions queued up. I just wanted to give everyone a quick intro. We are today we're live on Periscope / Twitter, as well as Twitch, and then at craftquest.io / live streams, we're live via YouTube as well. So people want to chime in. I think the only chat that I have open right now is the YouTube one. Got to figure that part out still.
Does that mean my royalties are triple because we're going on multiple streams? I got to look at my contract.
Yeah, your royalties are tripled. Absolutely. Because I'm gonna make a anyway. All right, so real quick, just to give everyone a quick rundown. If you go to craftquest.io / on-call, and you'll see this beautifully embedded form from Airtable, and you can actually drop us a question anytime. It can even be right now. It could be anytime during the week, in between live streams. If you have a question about craft, things that you're wondering about, whether it's something very specific, code-based, or just a more like like an approach, a technical approach question, drop those in there. They go in an Airtable spreadsheet that I look at and queue some up for Andrew and I to answer on the air. We also like to pull up unanswered questions from Stack Exchange to sort of either help answer them or give our take if there's already some suggested answers, and try to find things that are hopefully interesting to everyone. So check that out. Sound good, Andrew?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So, new year. Happy New Year. This is our first live stream of 2021. So, I mean, I would say it's exciting, except that it's just a thing that happens. We do it every first and third Thursday of the month. So we'll be back again in 2 weeks from tonight for another one. And you can always watch the live streams, the recordings on CraftQuest. /live streams, the same place. If you're on the site right now watching it live, it's the same place. I have them all archived there as well, including like snippets. If we cover something specific, I kind of carve that out into its own video, so you can zoom in and watch just one particular part of the live stream. Because sometimes we get a little long-winded here, and we kind of go on for a little bit of time. And sometimes. So last time we did Docker? We Dockerized CraftQuest. I think that was last time, right?
Yeah, we did. It was a magic trick. So we spun up devmode.fm, and we also Dockerized CraftQuest and got it up and running. Yeah, yep. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too. So those are on the site. So if you go to /live streams or just click here, then let's see. So Dockerizing CraftQuest and building your first Docker setup are the ones. And of course, there's the full live stream as well. So check those out. Anybody can watch those without a subscription. Although if you find the stuff helpful in CraftQuest, that helps us when people subscribe to the site, whether through an annual or a monthly plan. So check that out. All right.
Wait, the archived live streams are available to anybody now?
These one-off, these like broken out videos, I make some of these free to everyone.
I was gonna say, oh, that's great. I didn't know that those were free to everybody. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, trying to get more stuff out there. If you want to watch the full hour and a half of us bantering, then most of those are for subscribers. All right.
Bring a drink.
Yeah. Send Andrew a bottle of brandy, and maybe he'll talk me into making more things for everyone. All right. We
got a question off the bat. We love taking questions from the chat.
Yeah, we do.
Can we get a question already?
We got a question here from Matthew.
Go ahead. You want
totally
me to read
random
it or you?
Question. He says, do you use the NY Studio YouTube Live embed plugin for the stream on CraftQuest? Wow, great question.
That plugin exists pretty much only for Ryan. Pretty much is what it is.
Yeah. If you looked at the repository, you saw that Andrew hasn't contributed anything to that in months. So there's a little bit of a back and forth. No, Andrew created that originally for, I think you created it for CraftQuest, or you were playing around with live streaming, but there's a restriction on, was it live? I forget what the restriction was with subscribers, but
yeah, you have to have. It was both, like, I was playing around with it, but also for CraftQuest.
Right.
But yeah, in order for a channel in order to be able to do it, you need to have 1,000 subscribers or something like that. And realistically, like, it was something I was planning to like do occasionally, but I was never, very unlikely to ever make anything that regular out of it. I just don't have enough time to do it. So I realized that I was probably never going to end up happening, and then it became essentially the CraftQuest.io plugin is kind of what it was. And YouTube broke some things. Like, it did actually work flawlessly, right? But then YouTube broke a couple of things, and then Ryan had to go in there and fix them. Yeah,
so I've made some enhancements, and now I think I recently added a thing where you can add in basically a little like key, and then you can use that to make little like webhooks against it as well. So I have like this Stream Deck thing here where I can control the live stream, like the different scenes and cut between stuff. And I have one that
so fancy
toggles this CraftQuest like on air thing and the whole like video display from here just via webhook. So yeah, I do use it, and it's always a work in progress because it's kind of relying.
Yeah, I had to revert some of Ryan's commits, and I had to fix some of his code and push it back up to the server and everything.
That's not true at all.
Yeah,
The history is open to everyone. So
I have alternate facts on the subject.
Okay, alternate facts. Got it. We're gonna go there on the 7th of January. Okay.
I'm pot committed on it. Yeah.
Hey, I actually have I have that on our topic list today. Actually.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
Pot committed.
All right.
Just realized I'm streaming or playing the stream on my laptop, which is probably not.
And if anyone in the chat has any other questions, like feel free, chime in, whether it's something we're talking about, something you're working on, something you're curious about, use whatever.
Yeah. We are in the chat.
Matthew is talking about maybe using it on his own site, and he's more than welcome to.
Yeah, give it a shot. Let us know
it.
If you want to fork it and make some improvements. I've been wanting
File bug reports for Ryan.
So I think I am the maintainer now, right? Or a maintainer.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So one of the things that I wanted to do is break out the settings some of the settings out, because like toggling it live is in the settings, which means if you disable admin changes for a site, you can actually go in and toggle it live. So there's things like that I want.
I got a suggestion on that front. Oh, one thing. Mm-hmm. So I just did this for Image Optimize. Is I made a utility.
Okay.
For exactly that reason. For something that so it would give a readout of the way things were configured, right? But if you turned admin changes, allow admin changes, and you set that to false, then they couldn't see the settings anymore. Then they couldn't see that at all, right? So I had actually Will Brower. He's actually a brother-in-law, my brother-in-law, and amazingly, he does craft development too, which is really weird. But he wanted that so that he could see it in production. He wanted to be able to see, that everything was set up correctly. So I think I'm guessing that that's probably the quickest and easiest way for a plugin is just to add a utility that does it, because then the utility can do whatever you want. It can be sitting there. You probably would store the settings in a database table as opposed to, the way the normal settings are stored.
Right.
That's about it. But it's probably cleaner than creating like a whole sidebar, because there's not enough to it to really make, what I mean? There's no reason to have a whole sidebar there.
Yeah, it depends. We'll have to talk about what my roadmap is for this.
Don't even pretend that you have a roadmap. Where is your roadmap, Ryan?
It's in Notion. It's in my Notion. Anyway.
Would you care to share the link to your Notion roadmap, Ryan?
No. It's proprietary.
It's a 404.
I'll have to contact my lawyer. All right, so let's jump into the questions, Andrew. How about that? First one, and this is one that where I do want to. Let me pull up my notes really quick because I did actually do some prep here. All right, first one. Let me zoom in on this so it's easier to read. So this is from Stack Exchange. No answers. Asked 20 days ago. The person writes about sharing a code base between different sites. So they wanted to share a craft site with a basic theme, so like a set of templates and some configuration, aka like project config. So home contact page, matrix field with certain plugins installed. Okay, ding, ding, ding. This kind of sounds familiar. Like we've covered this with boilerplate projects, right? Mm-hmm. For every new site, this person would like to clone or fork from that repository. Okay, compose or create project, not a big deal. But push relevant updates from that repo back to those custom sites that were spun off from that source repo in the future. So they ask, is this possible or doable? And they're thinking the project config file is going to be the biggest problem in merging changes. But I think there's probably a lot of other stuff going on. So we've done the boilerplate live stream. We did a thing where we created a boilerplate setup, and it's a Git repository, but it uses Composer, so it's available via packages, and I think, right? And it uses Composer create project command to basically spin up a new project, just like you would if you were installing Craft via Composer create project, Craft CMS. So that's the first thing that I thought of. It was like, well, this, is going to get this person where they need to be, except the part about pushing changes. So if I created a boilerplate project and I spun up like 3 different sites with that project, any changes I make to my boilerplate project are only good for future projects that I create off of it. I can't push those changes out. So, Andrew, I want to get your take, but so I would say that, I'm not going to say this is impossible. And I know you have, before you did the boilerplate thing, you had a whole other repository that I found where you had like a whole scripting sort of suite of things that kind of cloned a project from a repository and built a new craft site and stuff like that. So like, what do you think about pushing updates from a repository or from like a main repository out onto these other sites? That seems risky. And I first think like, and this person's right with like project config, like UUIDs, things like that. Like, is it get messy? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would need to know more about the actual sites that he or she is trying to build with this stuff. But I mean, it just sounds like a logistical nightmare. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with this. There might be a use case where, okay, maybe there's actually a use case where this actually makes sense if it's like some master site, and
let's say like it's a marketing company and they're churning out like multiple like campaign sites or microsites or something like that, but then they want to be able to push updates.
Not even a thing anymore. If your marketing company is producing microsites, you probably should just fire them. No,
well,
I mean,
because
it used to be a thing,
you're spreading out the
yeah.
So
if they're totally separate, then yeah, maybe, right? But it used to be a thing where people would make all these microsites on different domains, and they would all have very similar messages, and they would all link back to this other thing. And it was a way to kind of scam the system with Google, but it's just not a thing anymore. It doesn't work. Like you're actually probably going to get penalized if you try to do something like that.
Right.
The other thing that it just scares the hell out of me, Ryan, from the idea that I'm thinking like, okay, well, yeah, sure. You could have this hooked up and you could have multiple deploys that happen anytime you push to a certain branch, and it could just deploy all the code to all these different sites. But I just like, I feel like, I mean, you got to be careful. You could easily make something work on one and break on the other. And
Yep. I'm 100% with you. And honestly, if the sites are that closely, like that similar, like content type wise, then you might consider chunking them up into multi-sites at that point.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking like with I get the template thing. I mean, you could easily submodule or some similar setup, like a templates repository in your project. And then you might have like base templates that then those changes can get like pushed out pretty easily, right? Because Craft doesn't care about that. There's really nothing sacred in there as terms as Craft is, concerned. Twig just takes them and renders them. Of course, they would have to work across all those sites with, field handle names, et cetera, et cetera. But so that's one thing.
So here's an idea. Yep. I want you to bring up a window.
Okay.
And Google Twig Bundle Installer.
Twig Bundle Installer. Oh gosh.
And this is a case where I'm like, I made something that I don't think anybody uses, and but it actually could be relevant here.
Okay.
So what this does is it allows you to leverage Composer, and it allows you to create Composer repositories, just like a Git repository or whatever. But you can then treat that as a dependency, and you can just do a Composer update, and will automatically update those Twig templates in your templates directory. So what it does is it creates a vendor directory inside of the root of your templates directory, right? And then you can namespace your your Twig bundle, like however you would namespace like a plugin or anything else that you wanted, right? It could be NY Studio 107 / base templates or something like that, right? And then this works just like a plugin, like just like any other composer dependency. And the way that it works is it is a composer plugin that it looks for a specific type of composer composer package. Yeah. Just like Craft CMS looks for things that are of the type Craft plugin, so that it does its custom stuff to do installing a plugin, which is just a composer package, right?
Right.
This works the same way. So he actually could potentially, this might actually be a use case for this thing, because this would allow you to have, the sites would all be separate, but when you make global changes to these templates that you want, you could have some local and some global, and then these, whatever templates you deem to be global, you could put into a Twig bundle, publish that separately, and then just like you update plugins or Craft, a composer update would instantly update all the sites to have all the latest of your templates in there. And that this actually probably would be a way nicer way to manage it than checking the entire thing in, where he's right, like project convert, he or she, sorry, totally could be messing things up in terms of adding or removing fields when you don't want to. You would have to have separate projects, right? So there wouldn't just be one repo. You'd have a different repo for every project. But the core or the bulk of the site in terms of the templates and stuff that you're updating, those could be siphoned off into like the separate bundle. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I was thinking something really simple as just like a Twig module, a sub module in Git, but yeah, totally. I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and this is even easier. All you have to do is add this to your composer.json, and then you can just require a Twig bundle, and it'll put them in the vendor directory inside templates.
So in the chat, Joe said, why don't we just use multi-site? And yeah, I mean, I didn't see that, Joe, when we were chatting earlier, otherwise I would have called it out. But yeah, I think this is the part of the thing where you have to kind of zoom back out and say, what are my requirements? You're like, what am I trying to solve? Rather than, and that way you're picking the simplest technical implementation possible without getting kind of crazy.
I kind of feel like we don't know enough though, because okay, let's say that they are, these are all separate marketing sites, right?
Right.
Are they all for one client? Would they really want to have one login for all the sites, or are they for separate clients where they wouldn't? Like, I don't know. So
yeah, and if they're for separate clients, right? Like you wouldn't want to do this. Like you wouldn't want to.
Right. But they might be, this is a very valid thing. I've seen people that develop a site for a specific niche. Let's say it's like a municipal government or something like that, right? And they develop templates for like just that thing. And they might want to have like a cookie cutter way to just bang these out, but then also roll out updates to their templates. Maybe, I don't know. It'd be a way to do it. It really depends on what they're doing though. So it's hard to say,
Yeah. All right. Good deal. So I'm gonna drop a link. I'm trying to write for ones that aren't answered. I'm trying to follow up with some information so we can get some answers in these for this person.
Yeah, you could add it in there and you can link back to CraftQuest in your answer.
Oh, well, I mean, I wasn't doing it for like promotional reasons, but
listen, man, SEO, don't pass it up.
You sure like an SEO plugin or something?
I know, I really should. No, but I'm being serious. Like, if you're gonna provide, so we're providing an answer, and the video that we're adding here it's worth something. Yeah, add it. I don't see that as being shameless promotion or anything. I think it's reasonable.
No, yeah. Well, I'm also gonna carve out everything before what we're talking about now into its own little video anyway. All right, good deal. I like your answer. I didn't even think about the Twig bundle thing. Not sure I entirely understand it, so I'm gonna read up on it again.
Okay, let me explain it. Well, if you don't understand it, then other people might not either. So let me explain.
Everybody in the chat's way smarter than me, so but go ahead. Tell me,
please. So it's actually really simple. So all it does when you add a composer package, there's a field in the composer.json called type, right? and it defaults to something like project if it's not in there. But if you have a Craft plugin, the type is craft-plugin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can write a installer for Composer that what it does is it will handle file or projects of a specific type. So that's what Craft does. So when a plugin is installed via Composer install or whatever, their plugin installer notices that and this thing is a Composer plugin. It notices that it's of the type Craft plugin, and then it does some special work, right, to get it installed. In the same way, the Twig bundle installer, if you create a Composer package or Git repo and a Composer package in it of the type Twig bundle, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
when that is required, when Composer goes to bring that in, it knows what to do. And what it does, literally all it does is it changes the root directory. So normally everything you install with Composer goes in the vendor directory, right? So literally all this thing does is it says, no, don't install it in the vendor directory, install it in templates vendor. And then from then on, Composer manages everything. So all of the files update, all that kind of good stuff. So literally all it does is saying, if you're requiring a package that is of the type Twig bundle, put it somewhere else. That's all it does.
You're still maintaining
handles the rest.
The plugin, right? Like it's not, yeah.
Yeah, all you have to do is in your main composer.json, you require the Twig bundle installer. And that literally is the plugin. So as long as that's there, it will know to route it to the right place.
Right. Okay. Maybe I'll do a little video on this. I don't have enough prep right now to do it live, but
yeah.
I see that Matt Stein is a contributor, so I definitely want to use this because I like Matt.
I think it was a typo.
Oh.
I'm not even kidding.
I think I have like some designation on GitHub as was it like a Arctic contributor or something like that?
Yes.
And it was literally for something that was like a copy typo.
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
But still, trophy's a trophy. All right,
but anyway, to get back to the original question, yes, a lot of these things can be done. My answer, I would need more info, honestly, and it ranges from don't use Craft for this to yes, there are excellent ways to do this using Craft, right? And it all depends on what they're doing. But even if Craft is the right tool, the way I would approach it would be really different depending on what they were trying to achieve.
Right. Okay, so speaking of the approach, our next question is kind of similar.
And Joe in chat has got a couple of stuff related to this. I'm just going to read out. He's saying he had a client who wanted to make multiple simple sites for their clients for special events and that kind of stuff. So they kind of wanted their own little site builder kind of thing, Each site would make multiple pages, and each page had a builder matrix block field. Yeah, okay. I mean, that makes sense. It's a valid use case for something like that.
Right. All right. So, one second.
I'm just going to drink.
Yeah, take a drink. Next question. Mm-hmm. Speaking of kind of don't know enough or need to kind of figure out the project, this person is actually asking for advice for a new project. And I like these questions. I mean, I think it kind of plays more to some of my experience, but this is kind of hey, my client has this site. It's a custom application built with Symfony. And they said the current setup is too complex to maintain. It's user unfriendly and not flexible and lags maintainable SEO structure. Okay. And the main concept of the app is it's an app that connects client requests to professional workers. So I can put in a request for a plumber or something, I assume, and then it can be matched with the plumber, and then there's this back and forth and these workflows that happen. So I'm not going to read all the steps here, but I do want to talk about kind of.
So it's like Tinder for contractors.
Okay.
What? Swipe right,
But anyway, So a couple of things is that like, the person fills out a form and then an admin person, matches that request with a professional, and the professionals are, are also like registered users as well. And they connect them. And there's like email notifications sent and kind of like these workflows that happen. And then there's like, once it's accepted, there's like invoice is uploaded. So there's like all these different things happening. So the person's saying, the question is at the end, can this be handled in Craft alone? Craft Commerce seems to have some of the functions available, but expects a product order price. And in their situation, the price is only set later in the process. Is a dedicated plugin needed to accomplish these tasks? So I think like my first answer is always, yes, of course, Craft could do this. But is it the right tool for this job? And I want to also back up and say, just because, this is the case doesn't mean that this should be the solution.
So just because the current implementation is clunky and unfriendly,
right,
doesn't mean that the solution should be to redo it in Craft.
Right. Or in like an off-the-shelf product. So, I mean, because that's the question is like, the big question for me here is like, how and when do we use like off-the-shelf products and solutions versus hand rolling our own solution, something custom, which is what they're coming from. And I've seen this before where people, they kind of, sort of swing like a pendulum between, custom to like off the shelf, custom to off the shelf, because they realize once you get off the shelf, like there's trade-offs with that too. It's not a solution. Sometimes it's not even a cost savings. So, and I suspect that this original build was done in Symfony because there were these customizations, like these workflows here, that probably the original developer said, we could do this in XYZ, but it's kind of like unique to this business process. We probably should just write the code ourselves to make this happen. So, I mean, the answer to, can we do this in Craft? Yeah, but should you? I don't know. What do you think? And well, actually, before I ask you, I'm going to say this, that like complex business procedures and operations are going to be, and this isn't even that complex, but like all these like things that have to happen, they have to happen like no matter what software you use. And the software isn't going to solve or fix or minimize or enhance or make more efficient these business processes if they're complex. And I know this from like firsthand experience, that you're basically just going to inherit those complexities and have to codify those into your software or into your configuration, no matter what. So you're not going to run from 4 through 8, this complexity here, or actually 3 through 8. You're not going to run from those. If you use Craft, you're going to have to figure out how to do those, and there's going to be just as much complexity in getting those set up as if you hand rolled it. In terms of like content management, there's not really anything happening here that they say that's really content management. So I don't see how you're really going to leverage Craft in that way. So anyway, so I would say, understand what your initial trade-offs are from your business requirements that you're getting from your client or from your customer or from your boss or the other department, and then figure out the best way to solve those, and then choose like, what's my technical approach? What's the technical debt that I'm going to take on because I have to own, these business processes in my software. That's my take. What's your take? Probably something much simpler than me.
No, I mean, I think you nailed it in one of the things that you said there, which is that I don't see a whole lot of content management here in terms of what needs to be done. And it's funny. It looks like every time you're switching scenes, I freeze for some reason.
Oh, you are?
All right.
Oh, there you go.
No, I switch back and forth between cameras. Anyway,
okay.
I think you nailed it in one of the things that you said, which is that there isn't a whole lot of content management that's going on there. So when do we use a content management system? When there's a lot of content to manage, right?
Right.
And what I'm seeing here, it looks more like it looks more custom app-ish. So let's just get one thing out of the way. You're 100% correct. You could build this thing in Craft. There's no reason you couldn't do it. It's built on top of Yi. It's incredibly flexible. You totally could build this in Craft. In fact, you could build it in Yi if you wanted to. There's no reason why you couldn't build it in Yi. The question is, what does the Craft layer buy you in terms of benefits? And at least from what was laid out, I'm not seeing a whole lot. If there was like a brochure marketing-ish site that is built around this, and there's a whole lot of other content we don't know about, then maybe you could do it. But this is something that looks more like maybe a little custom Ruby app, maybe a Laravel app, maybe build something in Keystone in JavaScript. But it seems, at least from what was listed on that ticket, it seems more app-ish, right?
Yeah.
And
Laravel is like an obvious choice, right? If they're already in the PHP ecosystem, and then Laravel seems like
yeah, but unless they have developers that have skill with PHP, and maybe they do, right? Then maybe Laravel would make sense. I don't know. Don't know enough. Don't know enough to say in terms of what kind of staffing they have or whatever. But it does just in general seem more appish. And let's just, another thing I want to say is there is no such thing as a non-custom site anymore. Like, it just doesn't exist, right? No, even if you're using like Wix or something, there's some level of customization that is happening there, right? Just the stack of stuff that you're building on top of and the amount of customization you can do is different depending on whether it's, Laravel or Craft or any of these other technologies that are out there. So there's no such thing as something that isn't going to be customized somewhat to a particular client. But on the other hand, I also think that there's no such thing as on the other side of the fence, there's no such thing as something that is entirely prefab. You're going to need to do something to anything, and so what you choose really depends on where the project that you're doing falls within that. Like how much reuse would we get out of the systems that the CMS provides? Okay, well then it's a no-brainer. Let's go with that, right?
Right.
If we wouldn't get a whole lot out of it and we would be doing a whole lot of custom work, then why are we using a CMS with it to begin with? It just doesn't make any sense.
I'm with you 100%. And I think about also, I mentioned technical debt. I think about that as well. Like, I could see like taking something like this and going into Craft with it, and then so let's assume that the person that's doing this doesn't have like PHP interest or skills, so they're going to rely all on existing plugins and things like that. I know you can do workflows with all the email notifications, all of that, but I could see that very quickly incurring like a lot of technical debt and complexity that they might get so far into it to where they say, oh wow, like this actually is maybe not the right choice. And I was thinking about something that we were texting about this morning.
Oh God.
You know what I'm talking about?
I'm scared. Go ahead.
So like you've done, I don't know what your status is in like poker playing, but I think that you probably have played a lot of poker, right?
Yeah.
And
fair to say. Not in a while, but yeah.
Okay. So I believe the barn that you like, didn't there used to be like Poker Central there at your place? Yeah. Did you have a poker table?
There used to be two custom poker tables in here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I came across something online, this concept in poker called pot committed. And so I started thinking about like, so and you have to tell me if I'm kind of taking this and stretching it too far, but I think about like technical debt too, where you get so, well, why don't you explain what pot committed is in poker first? Because you gave me a good explanation, and then I'll see if my metaphor is correct, or my connection.
Right. So poker is a game of skill that in the short term, there's a whole lot of variability in that, whether you're going to win or the guy who doesn't know what he's doing is going to win. In the short term, there's a decent amount of variability there. The longer the bigger the sample size, the less luck is involved in it, right? So it really is a math problem for a lot of the stuff that's going on. So pot committed is this idea that, okay, so a simple example is you're playing a hand, we'll simplify it, your heads up with somebody else. He bets $100. There's $100 in the pot now. You decide to bluff at it and you raise $300, right? So now there's a total of $400 in the pot. And you have, let's say you've got $10 left behind, okay? And you don't have a whole lot, you know, your hand isn't that great. The other guy goes all in. So clearly you're losing, right? So clearly you were bluffing. He goes all in. So clearly he's got a better hand than you, right? But it's only $10 to call to win a pot that is now going to be $720 if you call, right? So your hand would have to be worse than a 72-1 dog for it to be the proper move to fold, right? And so that would be a case where you would actually be pot committed, where the amount of money that you need to put in there is always going to be less than the odds that are against you. You know what I mean? It really is a simple math problem from that perspective. And in a game like Texas Hold'em, unless you're drawing dead somehow, you're never a 72-1 dog. Like, it's just never ever that bad. So it's a mistake to fold, right?
Right.
And you know, I guess you could say that from a technical debt perspective, but I will say that among poker professionals, the idea of being quote unquote pot committed is something that a lot of fish say. Fish being the people who are donating money at the table, right? And
would that be like the people the not so good players that, yeah.
Yeah, we call them fun players or fish or whatever you want to call them, right? And they use this term pot committed almost as a trope in that, you know, oh, well, I guess I'm pot committed now. And they're just making gigantic mistakes in cases where they're not actually doing the math, is what I'm saying. They're just, you know, they don't want to give up on something and they're willing to throw good money after bad, right? So the reason why I'm kind of on the fence about using this terminology, and actually, you know what, maybe it is kind of apt in the tech world too. But the reason why I'm a little bit hesitant about it is, yes, it is a real term, but it is incredibly misused and abused. You know what I mean? From the perspective of, it's like an excuse for people to put good money in after bad. They're not doing the math. They don't know what the odds are. And they're just like, well, I guess I got to do it. And it very well could be the same in the tech world, right? I think a lot of people look at stuff and they don't realize that sunk costs, like, you can't just say, well, you know, we spent X amount on this, we got to keep going down that path if it's clearly the wrong path, or if it's going to cost you more money in the future to maintain this thing. You know, I mean, I was talking with my wife about this. They have an app at the company that she works for, and they had two code bases. So they had an Android and an iOS code base. And I know personally from having done it what maintaining two totally separate platform code bases is like, and it's hell. It's absolute hell on earth.
Every feature request is double work, right?
Yep. Yeah. And this is a marketing driven company too, right? So they'll have marketing goals that need to happen and timely things. So things have to be done in sync. And it's just a complete nightmare to have a split code base, right? And so what I suggested was, well, you should do something like React Native with Expo and have a unified code base so that you'll be in lockstep in terms of, you've got one platform to maintain. The app that they're doing is not incredibly complicated. You know, there's no reason why you couldn't do it. And, you know, I mean, their business was they're hesitant to do it because they're like, oh, but we spent all this money on blah, blah, blah. And I'm just thinking to myself, look, the money you're spending on developing this thing is nothing compared to the money that you're going to have to spend supporting this thing going forward, you know?
Right.
And you're going to be living with this thing for years and years. And also the opportunity cost of marketing not being able to move quick enough because, you know, the Android one isn't ready or whatever. And then they're adding another code base. So they're going to do a kiosk version of it. So they're splitting out into a third code base. And then they want the same thing to be available on the web. So they're
and that's where, like, trying to use the concept of being pot committed kind of falls apart, right? Because it's like pot committed is on a like on a hand. It's not like a,
Mhm.
like, yeah.
Right. 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 Yeah.
Okay.
But it is very similar though, because like people playing poker, the example I gave, you had no money left behind, but people playing poker will think that they're pot committed when they still have a number of streets of betting to go. So they have a lot more money that's still at risk that they potentially have to put in to see it, and they don't understand the math of how this all works.
Mm-hmm.
In a similar way that in this tech stuff that you're building up, whatever this app is or website or whatever, I mean, the cost of maintaining it can be way more than the cost it took to develop it,
Right.
depending on what it was, and, be smart about it. So, yeah, I mean, it really, I hate to say it, but again, this guy's question, it's going to depend a little bit more on what exactly they're trying to do, but I'm not seeing the benefit of using craft in this instance, because what are you getting from that layer that you get for free? It doesn't seem like a whole lot. Now, tying it all back together, I made one of the first sites I ever made with Craft was a site that was kind of similar. I made it with Craft 2, and it was poker related. So it was allowing people to, it was allowing poker players to list packages, like they were going to play in a certain tournament. Mm-hmm. And it allowed other investors to go in and to take what's called pieces of them. So I want 10% of Ryan in this tournament because I know that he's fantastic and he's going to win or whatever. So this site let pros register. They could list packages. They could list the events they're going to play in. People could then buy pieces of that particular pro in the tournament. And there were these kind of steps where they had to publish the package and list the tournaments that they were in. And it kept graphs and statistics and all this kind of fun stuff.
So it's like tournament-specific stocks almost, like where you can buy a piece of the player.
Yeah.
So it comes out of their winnings then? Is that the deal? Or like how to... Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so whatever they win, if you stake them for 10%, mm-hmm. you get 10% of whatever they win. That's just the way it is, right?
Yep.
But anyway, the point is
contribute to their like entry fee or something like that. Is that the deal? Then
yeah. So tournament poker there's a whole lot of variance to it just by the nature of the game, because the stakes keep on going up as you're playing it. So what a lot of professionals do is they try to reduce the variance by spreading the money around in terms of who is in them. You ever watch any of these poker professionals that are playing in these big tournaments? You're not going to see any lately, because there's going to be like COVID and tuberculosis on the chips. Like no one wants to pass those between each other. Yeah, I mean, can't even think of anything I would rather do less than play live poker with a pandemic. I mean, seriously, this is horrible. Even without a pandemic, it's kind of frightening in terms of all the garbage that's probably on there. But anyway, anyone that you see playing in a poker tournament, if they are a professional, they are never going to have 100% of themselves. They're always going to be distributing that risk. And it's just the same way that you don't go out and put all of your money on one stock from one company. Mm-hmm. You buy into a mutual fund where you distribute that amongst it. And, from a mathematical point of view, you're going to come out ahead. So this is what all of these people do. So it's a huge thing in the industry. But anyway, the point is I built a site in Craft 2 that did all this, right? So it allowed people to list packages and buy pieces and graphs and check out all this stuff. And it worked. It worked pretty well, and it's not that dissimilar from what he's talking about. Now, do I think that Craft was the optimum thing to use for that particular project? Like, probably not, because there wasn't a whole lot of content authoring that I was doing. But I also used it as a project where I could learn Craft and see what it was capable of and do stuff with it, And it can do, he totally could do this project in Craft. And depending on how he wanted the UX to be, might not even need any custom plugins to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of what he was showing me there or was listing on the Stack Exchange article were just like, it could be handled with front end forms that did different things depending on the state of that particular job. Right. And it totally could be done just with front end forms. And then, there's no reason why that couldn't work. There's no reason at all why you couldn't do that in Craft. I just don't know that you get a huge benefit out of the content authoring part of Craft in this case.
Yep, I agree. All right, next question. And I notice your camera's freezing up. Is that on my end or your end? Do you know the camera thing?
I don't know. Okay. It seems to only happen when you switch, but just don't worry about it. I'll figure something out.
Okay. All right.
I can unfreeze it by switching back and forth.
Okay. Next question is about commerce subscription prices. So the person says, I need to be able to output the price of a subscription after the user has subscribed. I'm using the Stripe gateway, which is, I believe, still the only way to do commerce.
I was about to say, of course you are.
Yeah. And it's actually part of like the thing here. But so the post, this post, so for Commerce 2. So this is for Commerce 2, says to use this here, and it doesn't work for Commerce 3. That's right, it doesn't. So they looked for a workaround saying get all payments, so they could get the payments and then and then go ahead and like get the amount that way. However, the problem here, of course, is that that's actually not touching on the actual subscription data itself. This is like the payment data, but they said that this only gets updated when the subscription, the payment history is refreshed. So Commerce will routinely go back to Stripe and refresh and get payment data so it can populate on the site. So that won't work. However, like so many times when we're troubleshooting, this person is so close. So
hold on. Ask me how to do this, Ryan.
Okay, I have the answer, but go ahead.
I have no idea.
Okay, I do.
I'm trying to make you feel smart.
Oh,
all right,
no. All right, so here is the subscription page on CraftQuest. And the reason I'm using this is because at this point I already have this subscription data in my template, and so I can get hold of it pretty easy. So let's jump in, and I'm going to show exactly how close this person is. All right.
Oh no.
So I just want to show, like, if I'm getting a subscription, I'm just doing a query here on Craft Subscriptions, passing in the current user ID and just getting one, right? Basically the first one that's returned.
Yep.
For my site, you basically only have one, so it makes sense. And I'm just going to dump and die on subscription. So when you do that, then you can see here, what we get out of this subscription element, the data that's returned for this user and this subscriber. And then if we look in here, we get this in subscription data, right? But we don't get the price in here. We get everything. And this is probably where it might have gotten confusing. You have to go one level deeper into items because this, you could have multiple subscriptions. And then for a item, there is a plan, and there is a plan. Now, where's it? Amount right here. And so that's what you want to fetch. And that's what the person was actually trying to fetch using the Craft or the Commerce 2 code. So, oops, sorry. I have this on. There we go. All right. So that's what we want to get. So before I read the documentation, I went and fetched it like this, which is a pretty long way right here of fetching the same thing. So subscription is just this variable. I'm getting subscription data, items, data, then the index of 0 just to get that first one, and then plan and amount is how I can sort of traverse down into that, dig down into to get that data. And of course divide by 100 because it saves it as cents to get in this case, the $29. And then I'm just converting it using Craft's currency filter. However, you don't need to do that because this person, I think, was trying to use subscription plan data, if I remember correctly. Oops, where was it? Yeah. Subscription plan data. And in Craft Commerce 3, they changed it to just be subscription data. So this is where they were so close that if they had looked just quickly at the documentation, they would have been able to, let me just, let me go to my code, hang on. Here we go. So subscription data is the name of the property that they want to access. And then plan.amount divide by 100. And if you do that and then reload, there it is. That's the plan. That's the $29 that is passed in with the plan. So it's not the payment. So you don't have to wait for a refresh, getting it from Stripe and populating in the database. You have access to it immediately. And I actually don't show it here on this page, which is interesting. I think I used to. It used to be harder to get subscription data. You used to have to really kind of, I think at one point I was parsing JSON that was stored as like a JSON blob in the database for commerce. And I would have to kind of parse through it and get the stuff I needed. I think it's improved quite a bit in a lot of the recent updates. So anyway, so I'm actually going to follow up with that answer because it's actually not, it actually ended up not being that complicated. So that's it. So does that match your answer, Andrew?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
So that's it. You can just grab it like that. And it is in the docs. Querying subscriptions right here. And I think it's in the docs. Maybe it actually isn't in the docs. Maybe that's the problem. Let me see. Oh, you know what? I bet it's in. So this is where I was thinking, is this maybe, this is gateway specific. So this actually might be in the Craft Commerce Stripe plugin.
You should Google exactly what you're using, like in quotes.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What was it?
I don't know. Whatever. Yeah, you're way more trusting than I am.
Yeah, I know.
I always copy and paste. I never trust myself to type anything. I'll copy and paste like 2 characters because I think I'll get them wrong.
All right, so here's the Commerce Stripe gateway plugin. So subscriptions, I believe, still only supports this. So here you go. They have a couple things for, let's see, invoice payment, configuring the gateway. Let me just search subscription. Yeah, so it's not in here. Maybe it's not documented. Maybe that's the problem.
So go to your code real quick.
Yep.
And we're going to try out our hint from the other day.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, copy subscription.plan. Copy is the subscription.subscription-data.plan. No, like copy to the clipboard.
Oh, copy to the clipboard. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like that part. Yeah. All right. So then go back to
it actually would
GitHub.
Be this because subscription is just my variable.
That's fine.
All right.
I mean, I bet they're using it, but that's fine. So first search. Go to GitHub.
To commerce.
Whatever GitHub repo. Yeah, I think you got it open somewhere.
This is the Commerce Stripe. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So hit T.
T.
Yeah, and then paste it in. No, nothing. All right. So now I would just try Googling in quotes that whole thing that you have there.
Hang on, I want to try something else first. I want to do your same tip here. T.
I think it only matches file names though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So try just with Google in quotes. Yeah. And then Craft Commerce. Yeah. No results found. Okay. So I'm going to say it's probably not documented.
So subscription data is here. This is an array. The subscription data from the gateway. I mean, this is just the properties, but this isn't giving you the
That can't be right. No, that's a different property. That's a private underscore property because you were referencing it directly without going into the array. So that's a different one.
Mm-hmm. So it's not documented. Interesting.
I'm going to guess that it's not documented. I mean, I trust Google probably would know about it if it was,
Yeah. All right. So I am going to follow up with our friend here.
And let Matt know it's not documented too.
Triple Threat 23. With an answer for you. There you go. You don't have to rely on the the payment history. That can get messy. Awesome. All right. Next question. Are you ready? You have anything else to add?
Yeah. So I got a question for you.
Okay.
What is HTTP status 418?
418. I don't know. What's 418?
So I'm gonna put it in. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. In the stream chat here on YouTube?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can open that up. If you don't have it, I can send it to you in other methods. Just let me know.
Let's see.
Do you see it in the YouTube chat?
No, hang on. I have it on top chat. Let me see. I don't see it on the YouTube chat yet. Just your thing about questions.
I just sent it to you via IM.
Okay.
So HTTP status 418 is I'm a teapot.
What?
I swear to God.
Hang on. Let me bring this
Look it up. If you don't believe me, look it up.
HTTP status 418.
Which is a valid result code.
Okay.
Yeah, bring the window up so people can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. I'm a teapot.
Client error response code indicates that the server refuses to brew coffee because it is permanently a teapot. So it can never actually be.
Yeah. And this comes out of a sort of an April Fool's joke that was submitted as an RFC. And it was called the Hypertext Coffee Pot Control Protocol. And you know how HTTP has things like get and post and that kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has commands and replies. One of them is brew, and it's actually valid. And apparently there was actually a client, a fully functioning Emacs client that you could communicate with. It's like a real deal.
Browser compatibility across the board.
They all support it. But check out the Wikipedia link that I sent you. Because it's going to. Do you have it anywhere that I can? How can I get it to you that you can open it
No,
up?
I have it here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Magic.
So this is for real. Everyone who's watching is like, I had no interest in learning this, but this is a real thing that, back before people made boatloads of money on the internet, people actually had fun and did ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. It wasn't always about getting a click or making a buck.
Yeah. And in theory, this was also about making a point that, things were getting a little out of control in terms of protocols and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really funny that they've kept it and they keep it around. It's an actual thing. Like it's an actual defined protocol.
10 years after the publication of HTC PCP,
mm-hmm.
the Web Controlled Coffee Consortium, WC3, published the first draft of HTC PCP vocabulary and RDF, a parody of the worldwide consortium of HTTP vocabulary and RDF.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Nerd humor.
Yeah. So here you brew or post.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get. Prop find. And when.
Metadata about the coffee. I mean, that's useful. You want to know what kind of coffee is brewing, right? Yeah.
When says when, causing the HTC PCP server to stop pouring milk into the coffee, if applicable. Tell me when. I mean, so much of like the verbs that we use are kind of like, human action verbs. So it's kind of, it's funny because it's fitting, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that like some people were trying to get this thing removed, and then some programmer, some 18-year-old kid was just like, "No, don't get rid of our 418."
Yeah. Oh, it called for the removal from the Node.js platform.
Yeah. How dare you?
God, can we have fun? Can we have fun with stuff?
For God's sake.
I'm gonna start putting Easter eggs on CraftQuest. Free accounts for everyone if you find the Easter eggs. Free lifetime accounts. There aren't any there yet, but if you find them, when they're there.
Oliver
right.
says there are.
What's that?
Oliver says there are free accounts.
So you want to go for the next question?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. This is one that you asked me to do some prep for.
Yeah.
How to get all element types. So from within a plugin or module using PHP is your way to query for all the element types being used, including custom elements. So there's an elements database table, and there's a type column that you could query and get distinct results. But I wasn't sure if there was a native craft method that I could take advantage of instead. In an ideal world, I just need an array of the element types like this. So the person followed up and said, I found this, which is the, let me just open this real quick, the get elements method, get all element types. And they say, whilst this mostly works, in my case, it doesn't include Soul Space Calendar, event element, which they say is in the elements types column, but it does include the super table element and super table block element, which isn't in that table, which seems kind of strange. Now, this doesn't impact what they want to do, but I was thinking like maybe Andrew can talk to a little bit about like elements, element types, and then maybe we can investigate why some are found, and then where does craft, what does the method use? How is it fetching the different element types that are available? How does it know? Sound good?
Yeah. So first of all, Tim says that with the Internet of Things becoming big, perhaps we might see some more bizarre HTTP status codes. And the only thing I have to add to that is that with the Internet of Things, like that protocol might actually be relevant. Like for real, you might have a call that is on the internet, and you might actually it might actually be relevant.
There have to be internet driven coffee machines at this point, and not things that people will hack together with like a Raspberry Pi, but actual, they have them for like refrigerators have their own, but they probably don't have their own, like they're probably not using like HTTP codes to get, they're probably just using.
We have washers and dryers that in theory work, but their apps are such crap, like it just doesn't work. Yeah. So we're not even able to do anything with them. Just, I don't know. Not making me real sanguine about the whole Internet of Things. But anyway, so let's talk elements.
Yeah.
So the idea behind elements is if you come from a CMS background, they would have different types of things that were in there. You might have categories. You might have entries. You might have tags. Like there are all these different things. And one of Brandon's kind of brainstorms or flashes of inspiration or whatever is that a lot of these things are kind of similar, right? Like a lot of them share a lot of things in common. Like you might want to enable or disable an entry. You might want to enable or disable a category. You might want to enable or disable a tag. Like all these different things. Like they have a core group of functionality in common. So why are they totally separate? And remember, there's some other CMSs that shall not be named that, for instance, users were an entirely different class of things. I mean, you had to treat them totally different, right? One of the big innovations in Craft is all of the different things that are built into the system, whether they be users or entries or category groups or products, whatever. These are all based on a thing called an element. And the element is kind of an abstraction of a manageable thing that has a certain number of things in common in terms of, it can have statuses, it can be active, it can have field layouts on it, it can have all of these common properties. And that really is kind of one of the big inspirations for Craft is that all of the things that you deal with in the back end, when you're editing content, these are all elements that are built on a common ancestor. So they inherit all of the functionality that's in there. How'd I do?
That was good. And I was going to bring up the docs here real quick. Just so, because you had mentioned kind of Brandon in the original, concept of elements. So, yeah, right here. An element is the most basic unit of content. There you go. You can think about it. And there's different element types that we have, like built into Craft, like assets, categories, entries or elements, global sets or elements, matrix blocks, tags, users. They're all types of elements. And because of that, they're all kind of share unique or the same similar properties. And this is the elements table here in my just base project database. So you can see that here's like an element for a user. That's the I assume the default admin user when you create a new project in Craft, and then 2 entry elements. So if I added like more entries, then they would be populated here in this elements table for each one, and this is defining the type. But the question here is though, how does Craft know all the types that are available in an instance of Craft? Like are plugins like registering their elements or their element types somewhere? Like how does it know, or does it only know once they're populated in this table?
Yeah, and I think that is what I wanted to do, was use this as an excuse to go source diving.
Okay.
Right? So we're not going to go dumpster diving, but this is something that I do with a whole lot of frequency, is when I'm not really sure how something works, a lot of times I'll just dive into the Craft source and be like, well, let's take a look and let's see exactly how that thing ends up working. So let me give you a perfect example of this. Go ahead and open up your editor and go to vendor Craft CMS CMS source. So we're going to be looking at the actual Craft CMS source for this thing.
Yep. Okay. And so elements, right?
No. So what I want you to do is, and I do this pretty often, so just go up to the higher level, the source, SRC, at the top, and do Command-Shift-F, click on it, and then Command-Shift-F. And we're using PHP Storm, but VS Code, I know there's some way to do this too. So what we're doing is we're doing a global search for something. And I'm going to give you something to type in here, and I'm using this as an example because I did this today. Okay. So what I was trying to figure out is, how does Craft determine what the maximum size for an uploaded file is? Like what is the way that you can do that? And I didn't really know where it would all be, but I decided to search on something that seemed relevant. So type upload_max_file size. Yeah. So there's only one instance of this in the entire Craft code base, right? So just double click on it so we can see it in the full window here. Oh, look, they have a function called getMaxUploadSize. So here we can see exactly how this is working. So it's getting, you're seeing this ini get, what that is getting a setting from the php.ini file. So it's getting the upload max file size, and it's getting the post max size, and it's getting the memory limit. And then it's taking the smaller of max upload or max post, and it's saying that's the size of the thing that we're going to upload. And then it says, is there a memory limit? And if there is, well, okay, whichever is the smaller of those two is now going to be our maximum upload size. And then it looks at the actual Craft general config general setting, max upload file size, and then it takes the smaller of those two, right? So the answer to my question of, how does it determine what the biggest file size you can upload is that it takes the smallest of all 4 of these different settings that are in here, right? And it was, even if you don't know PHP that well, you can look at this and kind of figure out, what's going on. And a lot of times dumpster diving or source diving is a way that you can find out, like, okay, what is really going on under the hood, right? How does this thing actually work? And I think that for this person's question, it makes sense that we try to do the same thing. So go to, let's see exactly how element types are registered. So he mentioned that he found this Craft elements thing. Right. Scroll down to services.
Yep. I was just gonna grab the.
Yeah.
So this would be get
Yeah,
elements.
you could do it that way. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Do it that way. So grab, copy, get all element types, the most specific thing.
Yep.
And then go back to your source and pretend we have no idea where this could be and just paste it in. Okay.
Right.
So it's not used much.
So here it is in the C. So this
The
is
public function
this is a
is
use
the
of
one-
it, and this is the definition. Now we could, like, if I was here, I can also. No, I don't want to find the usages. I want to find the definition.
You can just command click to go.
Oh,
there.
command click. Yeah, that's right. There we go. So now I'm at the definition of it. Get rid of this.
Yeah. So the setup for all this is like, I don't know. Let's see how Craft does it, right? Because one of the things he said in his answer is one of these custom elements, the solid space calendar wasn't appearing, and the matrix block or for super table or whatever was appearing. Super table was appearing. So this is what it does, and this is a common pattern throughout the Craft code base, is it defines its own internal stuff. So it's saying, here are the element types that I define, right? You can see the asset, the category, blah, blah, blah.
So is this a static, like, listing here of those, and then...
Yep. And then it has an event that it triggers. And so anything that is listening for this event that wants to register a custom element type, all it has to do is listen for this event and register it, right? So what I was going to do to figure out why solid space might not be including it was I was going to copy that event register element types constant over there.
Mm-hmm.
Just the constant. No. Event register element types. Yep. Copy that. And then go to the vendor directory. It should be vendor solid space. So scroll down all the way to solid space.
And you're going to see if they're registering it in here.
Yeah, I'm just going to see if they're, he said that wasn't appearing. So let's see. Just paste the constant in. See if it's registered, and, well, there you go.
There we are. So they're not registering.
Right. So now, so Josh Crawford is the one that made Super Table, but I believe the company is Verb, so it should be under Verb.
Yep.
So let's do a Command-Shift-F here, paste it in.
And they are.
And he is listening, and he is registering it. So we have our answer. And Solid Space, Mitchell, or anybody else, if you're listening, you probably should listen for this event so that you can register your custom element type so that other things that depend on it know where to get it. But I just thought this might be a useful way where you're just like, you're scratching your head like, I don't know how this works. Well, even if you're not super well versed in PHP, you can still plumb around and get a decent idea of what might be going on, you know? But we just answered the question.
There it is.
The reason why is that they're not registering their custom element type. Why? I don't know. I mean, they probably should be.
Right. All right. That was a good answer. Very well done, sir.
I try.
So let's see. I think that was all of our questions. Is that right? Oh no, we had one more.
Doing it for okay.
You want to do one more? Or are you good? Are you
sure?
You got time? I don't know if we can help you.
We're an hour 20 in. It's no big deal. Let's do it.
There's been way less of you and me BSing with each other and more question answering in this live stream. That's for sure.
Well, I did tell a dumb story in the beginning, and we did diverge into poker a little bit.
Yeah, but I feel like you become better at the thing your whatever your domain expertise is if you understand how other things in the world work and how that applies to you.
Agree.
And what you do. So I think it's always important to have those sort of other concepts. All right. So this person
There's
says
an excellent book that is on that subject.
Oh, yeah. Please do tell.
And it's called Range: Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And it's gonna iterate some of the concept that you mentioned, but it's also going to
just on the desk behind me.
Stuff. Oh, look at this.
You can see I am.
Oh, look, he's got a bookmark in there, like making it look like he's actually read.
I am reading it, and I have
No,
I have a lot of marginalia that I've notes I've taken
that's
in
a
this.
napkin with peanut butter stuck to it. That's in the middle
This
of
is
that.
actually my live stream checklist from a long time ago. Uh,
But
uh,
what's the date on that? I mean, we'll know when you stopped reading it.
oh no, there's no date on this. It's just like an index card. But no, I always have like several books going at a time. But this is just the one that that I read. I've been kind of getting into this novel. Anyway, don't. So this is actually a really, really good book, especially for people that consider themselves to be generalists and think that it puts them at a disadvantage in the world, in the working world, because
It'll make you feel better.
it'll make you feel better, and especially because so much of hiring in the last several years has been about domain expertise and not about general knowledge and experience. To where I mean, that's the whole title of the book, in a specialized world, right?
Yeah.
So and I mean, you could consider us specialists as well, but this is really good. And I have a video or a blog post. I wrote something about, maybe it was in one of my emails about books that I like. I actually wrote about this in one of the CraftQuest emails that I sent. But there's also a series of books on learning as well, and I'll write about or post with the video, that tie kind of into this whole idea of being a generalist and a good learner. Good learners are typically generalists, and generalists are typically good learners because they know how to. I think it's probably what connected you to this conversation, is like connect different concepts and understand how they all relate. When I was in graduate school, like that was the whole thing. Like when you studied in this case, it was German literature, which I was not particularly good at in terms of being a graduate school performance. But the whole idea was taking different things and connecting them together and finding common themes and learning how to apply things from one to the other. Anyway, it's all connected, but it's a good book. It's funny that I had it here. All right. Thanks for bringing that up, Andrew.
Yeah.
We didn't plan that, which, all right, so here's go. Trouble getting
the show is way more. It's way more organic than it should be, but it works. It seems to work.
So the last question of the night is trouble getting the CP URL to work correctly. This says my client is using a proxy server to point to the production environment of the project. I always want to ask why here, but let's put that aside. So for example, their deployment is at messy URL, but their proxy server is routed to display nice URL. So what they did is they set the URL config field to the site URL config field to nice URL, or a environment variable to nice URL, which successfully rendered the nice URL links through all the templates. Cool. This person writes like I talk to myself. But when going to niceurl.com/admin, it redirects me to messyurl.com/admin. And they thought they could save that by using base CP URL config variable set at niceurl, but that gives them a 404 when visiting niceurl.com/admin, which is where I think they got stumped because it won't work, but it should work. If you set base CP URL config variable to something, then that is what your CP trigger will only work there at that URL. And that's at that domain, basically. And that's what Craft enforces. And this is typically used on multi-sites where you want to enforce one place, one domain where people can log into the CP, like, admin.craftquest.io is the only way to access the control panel. I set base CP URL environment variable for me, which is a config item. And then that's if I went to just like craftquest.io/admin, it would 404. But if I went to my cp. or admin.craftquest.io/admin, then it would work. That should work. So they're asking, why is the control panel refusing to cooperate here?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think this is probably a server configuration issue, not a Craft issue. But do you have any idea why they would proxy? Could this be like where it's like the the hosting environment like doesn't. I guess I'm confused like why are proxying like that. But
Yeah. So I think you're thinking kind of along the lines that I'm thinking, which is that yeah, we probably could get this to work, but should we?
right,
Like really? Should we? And maybe there is a really good reason why it should be done this way, and we just don't know, right?
yeah,
But my
and
first inclination would be, why are we making it so hard for ourselves? Like, let's just not do this, right? Let's just point the nice URL where it should be, and let's just do that, you know?
yeah. And if you want to have a separate even domain or subdomain for the control panel access, man, that's perfectly legitimate, right? It's a little bit of security through obscurity, but it could just kind of remove the whole thing. Then that should work as you set it up with base CPURL. I just set that up on a project recently. Ritter Knight, actually, after I didn't see this, but it was after I already loaded or saw the question. They said it sounds like your client's proxy server isn't configured all the way, which I think is right.
So a server side problem.
Yeah, it's a service. It's not a Craft problem. The way you have it set up in Craft should work. And you did everything right. They did say that, entry previews are broken because of all the cross domain stuff. You're going to run into all that stuff. So it sounds like
and again, why? Like why? And if there's a valid reason, then fine. We will figure out a way to make this work, and you definitely can make it work. But really, take a step back, and is that the best way to solve the problem? And I would say 9 times out of 10, it's going to be the case that it's not. And probably you should just take the path of least resistance, Well, what is it? Bend like a reed in the wind or whatever, the kung fu kind of deal.
Yep.
I just, like, why force it,
Shouldn't have to be that hard. Tim in the chat says, on a side note, site URL config setting has been deprecated in 3.6 RC2. I didn't know that. So
let's look at it.
Yeah. So I was going to pull up it on GitHub real quick. Let's see. 3.6. Bring that up. Change log. Site URL. Deprecated. The site URL config setting. Site's base URL settings should be set to aliases or environment variables instead. Fix inconsistency between config site URL and CP's base URL. I've actually run into this. So it's not clear that the site URL config setting and the base URL field in the CP settings here are the same thing. So they're asked to rename it, and they said, hey, how about we just take it away? And you just have to use base URL, which is the right way to go.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. That's helpful. I'll include that link in the with the live stream.
I can tell Brendan's a parent because he's just like, oh, you can't play nice with these toys? Okay, I'm taking it away. Too bad.
I kind of like the approach though, right? Like take away and reduce and just solve one thing. But that's part of I'm sure at some point, one of those was added first, and the other one, site URL is pretty old. So good deal. Thanks for the tip. All right. That's all the questions for this week. If you have a question that you want Andrew and I to answer, you can go to craftquest.io/on-call, fill out the fancy form, and that will release a flock of pigeons with your question, and it'll send it to my house and to Andrew's house. And it'll drop them down a chimney and all the letters will come flying out, and then they will overwhelm Andrew's uncle. I'm just kind of going into Harry Potter stories now. So drop us some questions, and of course in the chat. So if anyone has any questions in the chat right now,
what's you talking? Have you watched Kim's Convenience yet?
No.
Oh my God. My favorite show on Netflix now. We've been watching it. So My wife is from Malaysia, but she's technically ESL, but she speaks English with almost no accent, right? She's been speaking it since she was a kid. Speaks here. So we're watching this Kim's Convenience show, and the actor is a Canadian Korean guy, and he speaks fluent English too. But on the show, he does an accent, right? So one of his lines that he says all the time is "What you talking?" Right? So now my wife that speaks fluent English is going around talking broken English because she's watching the show. So she's regressed. Yeah, Matthew Loya says, sneak attack. Why are you a sneak attack? So my wife is like, she's regressing.
Should I watch this? This sounds pretty good.
Oh, it's a great show. It
takes place in Toronto, which is one of my most favorite cities in the world. I love Toronto. Yeah. Such a great place.
Yeah. Anyone who made it to the end of this and you have not watched Kim's Convenience, you're gonna love it.
I'm gonna watch this.
It's a whole lot of fun.
I'm gonna watch this tonight.
You should.
I need something. I need something that's not the news. That is for sure.
Yes, they're short, digestible episodes. They don't require a whole lot of brain power to do anything with them. I mean, it's fantastic to unwind to.
Awesome. All right.
That's why I said, "What's you talking?" I wasn't being.
I was kind of worried for a second.
Jerk.
I was like, "Oh boy, where's this?"
I wasn't being an insensitive jerk. No.
Not this time.
Well, not this time. Sure.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us, Andrew. Thank you as always for doing the live stream with me. Appreciate it. We'll be back in 2 weeks on the first and third Thursday of the month, and we might have a new time slot coming up in the future. I'm not going to announce anything yet, but there might be a new time slot, which will hopefully. Maybe I can talk Andrew into like more than one live stream. Maybe we can. Oh, I'm getting the furrowed brow.
We already do 2 a month.
Well, All right, everyone. I got all this like setup gear now, so
you gotta justify all the money you spent.
I was just like, I feel like I was on like text messaging you, and suddenly I ended up with like lights and a camera and like all this stuff. I mean, you did send me these awesome arms, like those Elgato arms and stuff, but which I'm using.
Yeah, and I'm drinking that bottle of liquor that you sent me, Ryan. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. No, you didn't send me anything.
Let me find a text message where you say, "Please don't send me anything." You said, "Hang on."
You sent me absolutely shiitake.
All right, we're gonna end this here, and then we'll take our dispute offline. That's one of my least favorite like business isms. Let's take this offline. All right, Andrew, thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks for watching and tuning in. We appreciate it. This is our first time going live in multiple streams. We were on Twitch and Periscope and YouTube. See how that works. We'll talk to you all on the next live stream. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.